I didn't feel okay in my own body. I didn't feel okay in what I was doing and where I was and who I was with. But I just felt like I had to conform and make it work. All I could think was, I want to study. I want to get out of here. I just can't do this anymore. I'm so grateful that she said that, because I did go to Sevilla and it changed everything. I remember telling myself, I will never work in a restaurant again. Welcome to the first ever episode of my podcast, Why Are You Here? With me, I'm your host, Abby Verica Ribeiro. I am so excited to launch this podcast. I feel like it's kind of been a long time coming. I have wanted to talk about a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in this podcast, primarily starting with the question that I get asked the most, which is, why are you here? I get asked by clients, tourists who come through our restaurants, even family and friends and people close to me. And that's why I wanted to start this podcast, so I can answer the question, why are you here and why am I here? So in this podcast, you're going to find a little bit about my story. I've lived here in Lagos, Portugal for 15 years, and how all of that came to be and how it all started and where I ended up and how I got where I am today. And you're also going to hear from people from all over the world that live here as well, people from completely different countries, completely different backgrounds, and everything that they've done that led up to them living here in Lagos, Portugal, including their successes, their failures, funny things, sad things, and all the things in between that make a life and a life abroad. So I'm really looking forward to sharing all of these stories, including mine, with you. So let me start by introducing myself and answering the question, why am I here? So I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and grew up a little bit outside of the city in a suburb, as many people do, called Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. I have a brother who's about 2.5 years younger than me, who still lives there, still lives in Philadelphia. I had an amazing childhood. I honestly can't say enough good things about the way that I grew up. My parents were incredibly and are incredibly supportive and always have been. I love my brother and I loved my friends and my school and the area. It was safe and everything I had was amazing. It's interesting because I think back a lot to my childhood, and I always think how interesting it is that I didn't end up actually doing exactly the same thing as my parents, because it was such a beautiful childhood and because it was so amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how I grew up. So my parents worked a lot. They were FBI agents. And as a child, it didn't mean anything at the time because your parents are your parents. So until I got to be about 10, 11, 12, and people started saying things like, are your parents really FBI agents? Do they carry a gun? And actually, I remember my parents even laughing about one time a friend in school asked me, do your parents carry a gun? And I said, of course not. No, they don't carry a gun. And I remember going home and asking my parents, do you know that this person asked me if you carried a gun? And my parents laughed and said, we do carry a gun. And I thought that was so funny that, as their child, like, you never think of your parents as anything other than your parents. I'm a parent myself to 3 young children, and I completely understand it now. And the world, when you are little, does revolve around you, and your parents are just your parents, and that's really all that matters. So in that spirit, my parents were FBI agents that were incredibly successful at what they did. And my mom went back to work after she had me, and again after she had my brother. And so I don't know how common it was. I know that it did happen more often at that time, late 80s and the 90s, is my parents hired au pairs who lived with us, and they helped take care of my brother and I, and they were always from European countries. My first au pair was from Denmark, and I had au pairs from Spain, from France, from Italy, from Germany. It was incredible. And honestly, I didn't think even that was really unique or different until you get older and look back and think of what an experience that was. And I talk about that now because I think looking back, it was probably very formative and may have had an influence on how I ended up wanting to travel, wanting to see things, wanting to learn more and be a part of something a little bit different. So I also still keep in touch with all those au pairs, and I love talking to them even now as an adult. When they would take care of us, they would speak their their native languages. So I was listening to Spanish and Italian and French and German and all the time. And they would have sometimes other au pairs in the area over that they became friends with, and they would speak all day in Spanish or in Italian or in French. And I remember being about 6, 7 years old and just really wanting to understand what they were saying. It was frustrating to me because I wanted to take part in the conversation. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of their lives. And I felt like I just had to figure it out. So I remember I was 7, 8 years old, and I asked my mom, can I please take Spanish lessons? And she put me in Spanish lessons for the summer. And it was just the best. And I was so excited that I could speak a little bit. And I was always picking up random words. And I still remember words here and there in Italian and French. And obviously I'm fluent now in Portuguese and I speak Spanish as well. I find it so easy to pick up languages. I hear languages and I can pick them up very, very quickly. And I attribute a lot of that to that time of being really young, 6 months to 8, 9, 10 years old, and wanting and listening and hearing all these different languages all the time. So, I went to public school until I was in ninth grade. And when I got to high school, I switched to an all girls private Catholic school, and I took Spanish all the way through. I also have the fondest, most amazing memories from high school. And my friends, the girls that I went to high school with, are still my closest friends in the world today. They were in my wedding. I still call them all the time. And I love saying that those times feel like some of the best because those are the people that know me best. And I think even now, they even maybe saw it then that there was something more, that I was always looking for something, I don't know, different, something like an adventure. I always wanted an adventure. And so after high school, I went to Penn State University, which was a huge university. For anybody that doesn't know, that's not from the States. It's huge, big football, very, very common and very well known at the time for sororities and fraternities. And I remember I went to Penn State and I wasn't sure I wanted to go. I spoke to my parents because I didn't really want to go. I wanted to go somewhere else. I wanted to go to a city. But I had gotten into the university. My parents said, listen, I think you should go try it out. So I did. I went to Penn State University and I rushed a sorority because I felt like that was kind of what everyone did. If you wanted to make yourself social and make friends, that was the way to do it. So I did, and I was an Alpha Phi, and it was great. It was amazing. It was an experience, but I never felt quite right. It always felt like I was trying to fit into something that wasn't right for me. But, my freshman year, it was fine. I went through with it. I remember going home a lot. I remember missing home a lot. And it's funny because everyone always says, oh, you gain a freshman 15 pounds. So for me, it was more of a sophomore 15 because my sophomore year, I was really dedicated. Okay, I need to make this thing a college work. I need to focus on my studies, but I also need to be social and go out. And I did. And I experimented way more with alcohol and drank a lot more, and it was fast food, and I put on weight. And I remember after my sophomore year being just so incredibly unhappy, and I didn't feel okay in my own body. I didn't feel okay in what I was doing and where I was and who I was with. But I just felt like I had to conform and make it work. And I remember coming home that summer from college and speaking to my mom, and my mom had said, listen, maybe this summer you spend with us and we go for runs together and we get back on track. And I was 20 years old. I was turning 20 that year. And I remember thinking, yeah, I just don't feel good anymore. This isn't going to work for me. I can't conform, and I need to do something different. I remember going back to college in my junior year and feeling really good, feeling better, feeling a little bit back to myself. And it just felt like it didn't fit. I made it fit and it never felt right, and it wasn't right for me. And I think that was the first time that in my life that I experienced feeling so different and feeling like an outcast without feeling like an outcast. Anyone that knows Penn State University or any university, a lot of them, especially in the Big Ten and in the States, it's very much your alma mater. It's you bleed blue and white and everything is about it. And you're going to miss football season. You can't study abroad. And all I could think was, I want to study. I want to get out of here. I need to get out of here. I need something else. I just can't do this anymore. And I remember I applied to study abroad in Spain because I was majoring in communications and marketing, and I was doing a minor in Spanish. So I said, okay, great. I'm going to go study in Spain. One of my sorority sisters, she was my big sister, it was the one that recommended I go to Sevilla. She went to Sevilla, and her and I had so much in common, and I loved bouncing ideas off of her. And she said, listen, don't go to Barcelona. You're not going to like it. I know you're going to like Sevilla. It's the right move for you. And I'm so grateful that she said that, because I did go to Sevilla and it changed everything. Everything changed from the moment I got there. I went in the spring of my junior year. I left in January and I was so excited. I knew two other girls that were going as well, one was from my Spanish class, and one I grew up with, actually, she lived across the street from me my entire life. And we lived with Spanish families. So it was full integration. My Spanish family spoke no English. I ended up making Spanish friends and speaking to Spanish people who were in their mid-20s, 24, 25, 26, who were saying that they were still studying. They were going to be a doctor, but they were still studying. Or they were taking a year off because they wanted to travel. Or they wanted to figure stuff out because they weren't sure what they were going to do. And I remember thinking, what do you mean? I'm confused. How can you take a year off from school? Because from where I came from, the trajectory of life kind of felt like, you go through school, you go to college, you have to get a degree, you have to finish in 4 years, and you need to get a job. And then after you get a job, you have your own place, and then eventually you are successful in your job, and then you'll get married, and then you'll have kids, and then you'll probably move to the suburbs. And that was kind of the trajectory that made sense in my head, because I don't know, it felt like the expectation of where I came from. And also it was such an amazing trajectory. I mean, the childhood I had was incredible. So why wouldn't you do that? When I got to Spain and I started meeting these people, Spanish people that were doing different things and studying different things, I met people from all over, people from Holland and Germany and France. And I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough information. It was kind of like a door opened, and I realized maybe there is another way to do things, or maybe maybe I can take a year off, or maybe I can do something else. So at the end of my study abroad, and I got to travel all over Europe with my friends, and I had so much fun and I loved it so much, I came back and went back to Penn State for my senior year. And immediately when I got back my senior year, I couldn't, I thought, I can't wait to leave. I couldn't wait to get out. I applied to the government in Spain to work as a teacher, and I got accepted. I found out in October or November that I was accepted to go back to Sevilla to be a teacher and auxiliar in a school. And from that point on, I knew the second I graduated, I was leaving. My advisor in my senior year said, listen, you've taken so many Spanish classes that you are able to have 2 BAs. You can have 2 degrees. You can have a degree in your communications and marketing, and you can also have a degree in Spanish. All you're missing is 5 courses. So my second half of my senior year, right before I graduated, I took 5 Spanish courses and finished my degree in both of them. And it was probably one of my most favorite semesters at school, because I was actually studying something I really was interested in, I loved, and I knew I was going to use, because I knew I was moving to Spain. Throughout my time in college as well, and since I was 15, I always worked in restaurants, because in the States, you can make really good money in restaurants. My parents always instilled in me that you need to work hard. If you want to have what you want, you need to work hard. We are not going to give it to you. No one's going to give it to you. My parents both come from extremely humble backgrounds, and they worked really hard to have what they have. And they worked really hard to give my brother and I what we had. And they said, listen, if you want something, you want to dress for prom, you want to have something different, you're 15 or 16, it's time for you to get a job. So I did. I got my first job when I was 15 at Manhattan Bagel, and I worked the grill, and I worked in the freezers at 5:30 in the morning all summer long. And after that, I became a hostess and a waitress at a local bar restaurant nearby. And I worked in high school all through college. And then when I went to college, I also would spend summers working at the same bar and restaurant back home. And at college, I got a job at a bar where I was making money on the side to be able to pay for things, to be able to go to Spain and especially my senior year. So I always knew that I needed to work, and I needed to make a life for myself. My parents were very fortunate enough to help me so much with paying my college tuition, so I didn't have loans. And so everything I made on the side, I tried to save and I tried to use for what I wanted because I knew that that was the money I needed for myself. When I graduated from Penn State in May of 2010, I moved to Spain immediately. And I remember telling myself, I will never work in a restaurant again, which is very ironic since my husband and I now have a restaurant group with 5 restaurants. And I have spent a lot of time working in restaurants. So I look back at that and I always think of how funny that is. That was 16 years ago. And I left. I moved to Spain. I was an auxiliary. I was a teacher. I absolutely loved teaching so much. I still love teaching. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. And I have so much respect for teaching and teachers to this day. What an amazing experience that was. And during that time I was teaching, I was linked through a Spanish friend because I needed somewhere to live to an apartment with a girl who ended up being one of my closest friends and still is one of my closest friends to this day. She's from New York. Her dad was Spanish and her mom, I believe, was originally from Puerto Rico, and she grew up in New York in Queens. And we became roommates and we became really, really good friends. And we made a bunch of other American friends who were also teachers and had other jobs in Sevilla. And it was also such an amazing time. I look back at that time so fondly because it felt like after spending so much time at Penn State and feeling like I didn't fit and feeling like nothing was going to work and I had to conform to fit a certain way, I found these people that kind of understood, that got me. They got it. They understood it. They were there too. They were doing jobs and living in a foreign country and they were living a different kind of life and speaking another language. And I was so happy. And it was so nice to feel that, I don't know if camaraderie is the right word, but with other friends and have those kind of friendships that are incredible friendships and are still very, very, very close to me today. So my roommate at the time and my close friend had suggested she should go and visit her good friend who had a hostel in Lagos, Portugal. Lagos, Portugal. She loved it so much. It was one of her favorite memories, one of her favorite places she had ever lived. And she regularly talked about the sopa and the soup of Portugal and said, we have to go and we have to visit. So she, myself, and 2 other girls got away for the weekend in the start of 2011. And we drove the 2.5 hours from Sevilla to Lagos. We got here. Everything was closed because Lagos at the time, everything shut down in the winter. Incredibly transient place, very seasonal. So when we got here, we arrived and she introduced us to her friend. Her friend was Selmo, and Selmo is my now husband. And, you know, we started speaking and we started getting to know each other and we visited each other between Spain and Portugal over the course of the rest of the year because I was still teaching and he was running a hostel. And at the time he had recently opened Nanaba and was running that restaurant in Lagos, which we currently still have at the time. I had also at the same time of getting to know him applied to do a master's degree in Barcelona. I went through the process and I was accepted and I was meant to start to do my MBA and my master's degree in October of that year of 2011 in Barcelona. I remember that the summer was coming and nobody wants to be in Sevilla in the summer because it's over 100 degrees. And so I was debating whether I was going to go home or I was going to move to Marbella. But Selmo said, no, you have to come to Lagos. We have to live in the same place. We have to be in the same place. We got to see if this works. This is amazing. Let's just live together in the same place. So and like a true 23-year-old at the time, took all my stuff, did not tell my parents, did not tell my friends, did not ask anyone's opinion, packed up all of my suitcases and took a bus to Lagos, Portugal, which frankly, I look back at and I cannot believe I did that. And I feel like it was a true leap of faith. And the reason I know I didn't ask my parents or tell my parents or tell my friends is because I knew that they would say, are you crazy? Absolutely not. You're not doing that. You don't even know this person. You cannot move to another country. And I think maybe inside I followed my gut at the time and I thought, I'm just going to do it. I kept my apartment in Sevilla, still paid my rent just in case I needed to go back and it didn't work out. I came to Lagos for the summer, took all my stuff and moved. And that was kind of the start of a new adventure. And that was in 2011. That was 15 years ago in June. And when I got here, it was kind of funny because I had made that promise to myself that I would never work in a restaurant again. Thelma at the time wanted me to jump in and start helping him at Nanaba and the hostel. And I remember thinking, no, I need to get my own job. I need to have my own thing. And really, I was coming to a tourist town. So what other choice did I have? I couldn't be a teacher. It was summer. There was nothing I could do. So I ended up getting a job bartending at a local restaurant called Bahia at the time. And I was bartending there. And there, after about a month and a half, there were some issues with the owner and with staffing. And I decided ultimately to leave for my own reasons and ended up jumping in and working at Nanaba in the hostel and helping my then boyfriend at the time. And because I had all this experience of working in restaurants, it was really easy. And I thought it was so ironic. I can't believe I'm back here working in restaurants. So I ended up helping him run the bar. I trained people behind the bar. I ended up running reception by myself and just helping his family. His parents were running the hostel and he was running the restaurant. I was doing the best I could to help and run and do everything in the spirit of I have to go back to Spain. I need to go do my master's degree and I need to go back to teaching and continue with what I was doing before. I eventually obviously did tell my parents that I had moved to Portugal and my mom came out to visit and she got to see it and she got to meet Salmo and it was great. And I told my dad, and at the end of the summer, Salmo and I had this long talk and he was like, you cannot go back to Spain. This has been amazing and I want us to stay together. And another crazy leap of faith. And I still look back and think, I can't believe I did that. And I chose not to go back to Spain. I chose not to go do my master's degree, not to go back to teaching. And I think at the time, also that decision was done so impulsively and so quickly. And when you're 23 and you have no responsibility, nothing going on, it makes total sense. I also think maybe deep inside, my gut told me, stick this out. This is right. And in the past, I had never followed my gut when it came to what college or university I should go to or how I should do it or what I should do. And I felt like, no, I'm going to listen to myself this time and I'm going to do it. And thank God I did because here I am. I stayed in Lagos. I worked after 2 years at the end of 2012, all of 2011 and 2012. I knew that I needed to do something else. I had made that promise. I'm never going to work in restaurants. I need to do something more. Where I was from and also my parents' background as FBI agents, they were so successful. They had so much success. And I think working at a restaurant is not an idea of success to my parents and where I came from. And that does not make you successful. And my parents would sometimes say to me, you have 2 degrees. You were about to go do your master's. You have so much experience. Why are you doing this? Why are you living in Lagos, Portugal? Working at a restaurant, running around, trying to manage everything at the same time. And I was doing marketing and I had photography degrees and I was trying to do everything for the restaurant, including not just working there. And actually, I learned a ton about that. And at the time, I listened to my parents and I felt that they were right. So at the end of 2012, I decided I want to go to New York. I want to go to New York City. It's been the dream I've had since I was young. Always wanted to live in New York. My parents met in New York City. New York was the dream. And I thought, if I don't do this now, I will always regret it. So I told Selma, I'm going to move to New York. I need to move to New York. And I remember Selma saying, I'm going to come with you. I'm going to make it work as well. And so the two of us moved to New York City together at the end of 2012. And I got a job working in an advertising agency. And I worked for clients like JP Morgan Chase and H&M. And I was successful. I did a really good job. I worked really, really hard. And I really enjoyed that experience. After a year, I moved to Ogilvy, which is a much bigger agency, or was at the time, and kept working. And Selma opened a cafe in the East Village in Manhattan, which was also very successful. And we were doing well in New York. We spent all of our vacation days in Lagos. We would come back. I would sometimes help out when I came for vacation days. Selma would come back for 3 months and work in the summers because it was so crazy. And then I would stay there. Sometimes I would help him with Excels for the restaurants, but also still working all the time. And after a year and a half, it was really hard in the States. I had 10 vacation days a year. and that was it. I got to take a train home on the 23rd, see my family for 2 nights, and on the 25th at night, Christmas night, I was taking a train back to New York City to go to work on the 26th, and that was okay, but I didn't spend almost any time with my family, and I wanted to go back to the States because I thought, "I'll see my family more, I'll see my friends more," and the truth was I didn't. I didn't see my family more, I didn't see my friends more. I worked more, and it was a completely different lifestyle, and things didn't stop. In the beginning, it was so exciting, it was so thrilling, and everything about New York, even to today, is amazing. After living in Spain and then Portugal for 2.5, 3 years before, I thought, I don't know, I wanna travel, I wanna see the world, I wanna do more, and this lifestyle in New York is not gonna let me do that. And even to myself and to my family and friends, working in a restaurant is not an idea of a success. I felt like I was still trying to make it work in New York, and I needed to make a decision. It was kind of a crossroads in my life and in Salmo's life, and we had a talk, and we said, "Listen, we can't live with a foot in Europe and a foot in America, so let's pick one." And ultimately, we picked Portugal, and we got on a plane, and we moved back to Portugal in 2014. I said to myself internally, and I will never forget it, if I'm going to go back to Portugal, I'm gonna make something of it. I don't want to live on a beach and do nothing and just work at a restaurant. Again, I also think there's nothing wrong with that, and I deeply admire that. But inside, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted to make something. I wanted to build something. I wanted to prove it to myself. And I also wanted to prove it to my family that moving back here was going to be worth it and that I was going to put the work in and turn this into something of a success, and also defining success. You know, when you're 25, you define success very much by maybe sometimes what your family and friends define as success, what you were told is success. And I think when I was 25, I decided I need to redefine success because I can be successful and live in Lagos, Portugal, and I can define my own success. And maybe that success means I still get to travel and I still get to have a nice life and I still get to create a business that I think is going to be more and bigger. With that in mind, I moved back to Lagos, Portugal with Selmo at the time. We got to work immediately. We started running Nanaba, his first restaurant that he opened in 2005 together. It was 16-hour days. It was working nonstop. It was managing the front of house while he was in the kitchen, managing the kitchen, working, showing up at 11 a.m. to open for lunch and staying till 1 o'clock in the morning till we closed. And that went on for years. And you know, my saving grace at the time was I had no friends. You know, Lagos was a very transient place. It was so hard to make friends. Anytime you made a friend, maybe that was coming through, they were gone within a month. So what I realized quickly was I can't make friends and I can't really be friends with my employees. So I just worked nonstop all the time. I learned that we didn't have an accounting system. So I built an accounting system from scratch in Portuguese. I did all the marketing and all the photography for our businesses. I launched our social media accounts, kept them up, did all the posts, and also managed the front of house at the same time. I helped hire. It was everything. We were everything. My husband and I did everything and anything to make the business work and to make it keep growing. At the time, it was so hard. I feel like maybe any business owner who has ever owned their own business can relate to the first few years of owning your own business. It's hard. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the work, you have to work really hard. Sometimes it feels like you just want to give up. Sometimes it changes you in a good way, and sometimes it changes you in a bad way. And, you know, after doing that for a couple years, we got married. My husband and I got married in 2015. And every winter, we would just work constantly and then leave. We would shut the restaurant down for 3 months and we would go traveling, backpacking through Central America, or go to another country and go visit, go back to the States and stay with my family and see my friends. And that's really what I ended up looking forward to, coming back on the grind, working really hard, enjoying beach days on the West Coast every once in a while, and then traveling. In 2017, I became pregnant with our first child, and I worked until I was 41 weeks pregnant. And then I had my first child. I had a son, and everything changed instantaneously. And I wanted to spend time with him, and I didn't want someone else to be with him or raise him. I wanted to do it. Also pregnancy in a foreign country. We're going to talk about that a lot on this podcast, but it was hard. I had no friends and no family at the time. I had my in-laws here, but I was coming from a different healthcare system, a different language, a different culture, and nothing made sense to me. I did everything wrong culturally in that time. I remember being 3 months pregnant and I couldn't figure anything out because in the States you have the same doctor and you always go to the same doctor and the doctor tells you what you need to do and the blood work and everything. And it wasn't like that here. I had no idea what to do and I had no one to talk to about it. And everyone said, "Oh, you just have to go to the Sensudes. You have to go to the health center." And I will never forget. I went to the health center. The doctor was actually from South America. And so she spoke like a mix of Portuguese and Spanish. She spoke no English. And I understood maybe half of what she said. And I said, "I just want to have a scan. I want to make sure that everything's okay." And she said, "Oh, you can't do that until you're 12 weeks. I didn't really understand. And I thought, okay, it'll be fine. I'll just figure it out. It'll be okay. And I'll never forget waiting at that time. I was 8 or 9 weeks. I waited the 3 weeks to go back and I couldn't wait to have a scan to see my baby. It was the first time I was going to see my baby and my husband and I were so excited. We went together. We were so excited. I remember the doctor said, "Why don't you have a scan finished already?" And of course, this was all in broken Spanish and Portuguese, and I had no idea what she was talking about. And I said, "What do you mean? I thought that's why I was here." And she said, "No, you were supposed to do it. How do you not know this? This is your job to get this done. Why haven't you done it?" I remember sitting in the office and I just burst into tears and I just started crying so much because it was the first time I was pregnant. I'd never had a baby. I'd never even managed a public health system because in the States, that's not even a thing. I didn't even have health insurance. I had public health insurance. I didn't even know you had to have private health insurance. Nobody helped me. Nobody did anything. And I remember leaving there and I was in the car. I was crying so much. My husband at first was like, "Why didn't you go get the scan? Why didn't you do everything?" And I remember telling him, "I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't understand half of what anybody's saying to me. I've never been here before. I've never been in this experience. I've never even been pregnant." And I think he sat there and it just clicked. He's like, "Okay, I just thought you always you have it under control. It's all fine." And he's like, "I'm going to help. We're going to figure it out and it's going to be fine." And we did. And I got private health insurance. I started going to a private clinic. And I got the scans and I got to see my son. And my whole first pregnancy was like that. I went through 3 doctors till I found one that I liked. And then I finally went through it and birthed in a private hospital, had to go look at hospitals. And, having a baby abroad in a foreign language, no matter where it is, with a system you don't know, with people you don't know, without a support system, it's hard. It's really hard. And I think that time of working 16-hour days to becoming pregnant, to having my first baby, to going through all of that. I mean, I look back at that time and I think about how incredibly life-changing that time was for me. It went like that even with our second baby. After that, we opened our second restaurant in 2018, Abigail's Cafe, which has been open now for 8 years. My son was 9 months old and of course, new mom, "It'll be fine. I'll bring the baby to work. It'll be lovely and I'll carry him." And no, he had reflux and he never slept. And I didn't sleep for 9 months. And that's the truth. And he vomited on me all the time. It's what happened. And I think that that's true no matter where you are. I think it's relatable in any country. So I love these kind of topics because I think they're so normal. They're human. They're the reality. And it doesn't matter where you live if it's the most beautiful place in the world. This is what it is. And this is the beauty of taking the leap to go abroad. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. And having my son and then opening my second restaurant and opening our second restaurant, my husband had to jump in. He had to do so much. The city shut our road 3 days after opening and didn't open it for 3 years. COVID happened in the middle of this road being shut 2 years later. I had another baby in the end of 2019 who was a 2-month preemie. I have all this crazy stuff that happened over that course of that time, 2020 COVID. I mean, I thought we were going to lose everything. And yeah, in 2021, after COVID, we opened our third restaurant, another Nanaba. In 2023, we had our third child, another daughter. And it was an incredible joy. Also changed things. My husband's an incredible chef. I mean, he's unbelievable. He is, I call him the flavor master because he puts all these flavors together that you would never imagine that you would put together. And he just makes the most explosively delicious food in the world. And you have to come try our food because it's just unbelievable. Everything's homemade and everything's healthy. And it's just incredible. You know, we had all these things and this infrastructure, and I had built out an accounting system, and I was working on the marketing, and I was trying to hire and do contracts for all the employees and everything. And it just got to the point where there's just not time. You know, I had 2 kids. I was pregnant with our third at the time, and I thought, be you can't be everywhere all the time because you also want to spend time with your kids. And the reason we live here, a big reason why we didn't choose the typical New York lifestyle, is I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to have time with them. I wanted to be a part of, before I had kids, I didn't realize how much I wanted it until after I had them, how much I wanted to be a part of their lives. So we started training people. We got new people. We got a team, and we started getting out of the day-to-day. I got out of the day-to-day of the restaurants in 2022. It's amazing. We've gotten to grow our businesses because of that. You know, we have all that experience of a day-to-day grind of working, of trying to make it work, of waiting tables and bartending and working in the kitchen and bussing and marketing and accounting and contracts and HR and everything you can imagine. And it's amazing to have built this team of people that we have now into this restaurant group. And we have a restaurant group now. It's called Ameza Restaurant Group here in Lagos, Portugal. We have 5 different concepts, including the burgers, famous burgers, Nanaba famous burgers. We've been named top 50 burger joint worldwide by several publications. Abigail's Cafe, Specialty Coffee and Brunch, the Pizza Garage, which opened last year, White Rhino Sushi, which opened this year, and our industrial kitchen. And having grown into this group, Ameza, really, we did it because of our family. We love our children, and our goal was always to grow together. My husband and I grow together. We work together every day. And, it's not always easy, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love working with him, and I love growing this business with him and growing our family together. Ameza is actually our names of our family. So the first letters of every person in our family. So A for me, for Abby, M for my daughter Maya, E for Emilia, S for Selma, and A for Arlo. So Ameza, which means to your table in Portuguese, is also very representative of our family and everything we've grown and everything we've done until now. So proud of everything my husband and I have done until now in growing our businesses and growing our family and spending so much time with them. It's still a very young family. Our kids are still young. And I'm just excited to share this journey of how this all kind of came to be. It's been unbelievable. I feel so incredibly privileged and happy to live in this beautiful place, Lagos, Portugal. I couldn't be happier. And I'm really looking forward to talking about all of that during this podcast and sharing a lot of these stories and this information that I hope will be relatable to everybody, that I can ultimately answer, why are you here? And why am I here? And the whole story. I'm so excited to share all these stories. I'm also so happy to say, after this long story and all of these things that I've personally gone through, I'm so proud of myself now, 15 years later, looking back at myself at 23, 24, and 25, that I have redefined success for myself. I found what success means to me. And maybe it didn't follow the trajectory of what I thought was success, but I know that this is success. And I'm so proud of the fact and happy that success looks like so many different things to so many different people. And there's really not one definition of success. And I hope to pass that on to everyone here who's listening. I want to pass that on to my children, that success, you can work in a restaurant and be incredibly successful. You don't need to have all the degrees and work in the highest level to be successful. Success is defined by your own definition, whatever that may be. And I hope that everyone can define their own success in their own way. And I look forward to also hearing everyone else's version of success as we move forward. You'll be hearing a lot of interviews of other people who have done the same thing, people from all over the world, all different countries who have moved here, and their backstory. And we'll talk about where they came from and what that decision was like and why they decided to move here and what they've done since they've gotten here, successes and failures and funny things and raising children, anything. We'll talk a lot about also why Portugal is such an amazing place. We'll talk a little bit about our favorite places here in Portugal, all the stuff that anyone would want to know before you take that leap of faith to move either here to Portugal or even maybe somebody who's looking to move abroad. And I hope you'll follow us along. I hope you subscribe and follow, and I look forward to a lot more discussions. Seja!